Hello everyone, it's Scott, and I'm back with the top 10 Mythic Rare reprints from Magic the Gathering Foundations. So we got a lot of reprints in Foundations, and we're going to look at the top 10 that I think are the most impactful to Standard. But before we do, remember to like and subscribe to get further content like this during Foundation season and beyond. So let's dive into our top 10 list. So coming in at number 10, we have Vivien Reid for 3 and 2 green mana. You legendary planeswalker Vivien with 5 loyalty. And her +1 ability allows you to look at the top 4 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature or land from among them, put it in your hand, and put the rest in the bottom of your library in a random order. And for -3, you get to destroy a target artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. And for -8, you get an emblem with creatures you control, get +2/+2, and have vigilance, trample, and indestructible. So when Vivien originally came out in the core set, it was a card that was definitely played in Standard. So I think over the next 5 years, Vivien will be certainly playable again in, green stompy style decks where you want access to more lands and more creatures. And when you probably are playing Vivien on turn 5, you've already got some creatures on the field that'll be able to protect Vivien. And if there are troublesome enchantments or artifacts in play or creatures with flying, Vivien can simply remove those from the battlefield. And then from there, you're just going to keep plussing her, and you're going to eventually get to the point where you can go ahead and ultimate her. And once you do, your creatures have vigilance, trample, and indestructible. And in that case, it's pretty hard to lose the game at that point. Next, we've got Liliana, Dreadhorde General, coming in at number 9 for 4 and 2 black mana. You legendary planeswalker Liliana, who has 6 loyalty, and whenever a creature you control dies, you get to draw a card. Her +1 ability creates a 2/2 black zombie creature token, and for -4, each player sacrifices 2 creatures of their choice, and for -9, each opponent chooses a permanent they control and each permanent type and sacrifices the rest. So basically, Liliana was, if you could get to her ultimate, was almost a board wipe on a body. And when Liliana was in Standard during the War of the Spark season, she was a very powerful planeswalker in that set and was really kind of the top end of control decks in that format. And I think she'll be that kind of planeswalker again. Coming in number 8, we have Massacre Worm for 3 and 3 black mana. You get a Phyrexian Worm. That's a 6/5. And when this creature enters the battlefield, creatures your opponent controls get -2/-2 until end of turn. Whenever a creature an opponent controls dies, that player loses 2 life. So Massacre Worm, the first time around it was in Standard, it was highly played. It was reprinted in a core set, and it saw some play under those circumstances. But I think we're kind of in a place where if you can get to Massacre Worm, it's a card that I think has a lot of playability. And it's another one of those black cards that once you play it, just by playing the game, your opponent is going to be losing life because every time a creature dies, they lose 2 life. So I think this is a card that's got some Standard playability in the right build. Next, we have Muldrotha, the Gravetide, for 3, a black, a green, and a blue mana. You get Muldrotha, an legendary creature that's an elemental avatar, and is a 6/6. And during each of your turns, you may place a land and cast a permanent spell of each permanent type from your graveyard. So this is the really power of Muldrotha, is that once you get it on the field, if your opponent can't deal with it, and you're probably playing this in some kind of graveyard strategy, then every turn you get an extra land to play, and you get to cast a permanent of each type you have in your graveyard. And typically that means that if your opponent doesn't deal with Muldrotha, that it puts you in a place where you're really well positioned to win the game. And that's why Muldrotha is number 7. Coming in at number 6, we have Aurelia, the War Leader, for 2, 2 red, and 2 white. You get a legendary creature that's an angel and is a 3/4 with flying, vigilance, and haste. Whenever Aurelia attacks for the first time each turn, untap all creatures you control. After this phase, there is an additional combat phase. So the exciting thing about Aurelia is that second ability there, where after your first attack each turn, you get to untap all your creatures and attack again. And in Standard, being able to attack twice on the same turn is really powerful. And because of that, I think Aurelia becomes the top end of Boros decks, where you're really looking probably to play Aurelia and then get in maybe one additional attack with Aurelia, and that's probably going to be enough with those types of strategies to win the game. Alright, coming in at number 5, we have Omniscience for 7 and 3 blue mana. You get an enchantment, and you may cast spells from your hand without paying their mana cost. Bonkers ability, and mana for it is really high, but when we have seen this successfully cast in Standard, and you've got a hand that has got a lot of cards in it, basically you get to empty your hand every turn, and you get to then refill it with all the card draw effects you're going to have. So Omniscience, incredibly powerful card. If we find a deck where this is really usable in Standard, I think it's going to be really one of the top cards that we see from the set. Next at number 4 is Lyra Dawnbringer for 3 and 2 white mana. You get a legendary creature that's an angel and is a 5/5. Lyra has first strike, flying, lifelink, and other angels get +1/+1 and have lifelink. So Lyra came out in the first Dominaria set, and what Lyra brought to the table was, we talked about Baneslayer Angel being kind of the quintessential, really powerful angel card, and Lyra, I think, is equally powerful. And if you can attack with Lyra, you're basically turning the game around, and you're going to gain 5 life every turn. It kills anything in combat with the first strike ability, and the bonus of helping your other angels and giving them lifelink really puts the opponent on their back foot, trying to figure out how to deal with Lyra if they don't have a removal spell that can get her off the field right away. Coming in at number 3, we've got Demonic Pact for 2 and 2 black mana. You get an enchantment, and at the beginning of your upkeep, choose one that hasn't been chosen. This enchantment deals 4 damage to any target, and you gain 4 life. Target opponent discards 2 cards, you draw 2 cards, or you lose the game. So this is a very powerful card, and we've seen this as a combo, and under those circumstances, and we've got both pieces of the combo now in Standard because of Foundations, that combo is going to be very powerful, and I expect to see this in Rakdos decks where you kind of exhaust the abilities first, and then you give this to your opponent and they simply lose the game at that point. Coming in at number 2, we've got Dragon Master Outcast for a red mana. You get a human shaman, that's a 1/1. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control 6 or more lands, create a 5/5 dragon creature token with flying. So it has to be on the turn when you untap and begin your upkeep. But if it is, then every single turn you have 6 lands. If your opponent can't kill Dragon Master Outcast, then you just get a 5/5 red dragon creature token with flying, and that's an incredibly powerful ability. And because of that, Dragon Master Outcast is my number 2 in our reprint of Mythic Rares from the set. Alright, coming in at number 1, I've got Doubling Season for 4 and a green mana. You get an enchantment, and if an effect would create 1 or more tokens under your control, it creates twice that many of those tokens instead. if an effect would put one or more counters on a permanent you control, it puts twice that many of those counters on that permanent instead. So Doubling Season is an incredibly powerful enchantment. Obviously, it sees a tremendous amount of play in Commander, but when it was in Standard, it saw play because it's just a really powerful card. And it even sees some modern play still, even though it's 5 mana. So if we have a way to kind of ramp into this, I think it's going to have a really significant impact on Standard, because we already have a lot of counter decks out there. We've got a token deck out there already. And I think some combination there of those two is going to create a pretty powerful Doubling Season deck come Foundation's Standard Season. Alright, so those are my top 10 Mythic Rares from Magic the Gathering Foundations that are reprints. So over the next couple of days, I'll be doing reprint videos for rares, commons, and uncommons. And thanks for staying to the end of the video. And I put here for you my Mythic Rare video for new cards and also my rare video for new cards debuting in Foundations. Thanks for staying to the end of the video, and I will see you in the next one.